Well, welcome everybody. On behalf of the Colorado Fruit and Vegetable Growers Association, I would like to welcome you and thank you for taking the time, especially away from harvest, as we have the opportunity to visit with U.S. Senator Cory Gardner. My name is Robert Cicada with Cicada Farms in Brighton, Colorado, and the current president of the Colorado Fruit and Vegetable Growers Association. Thanks to all of our valuable Colorado Fruit and Vegetable Growers Association Platinum, Gold, and Silver sponsors, whose logos you'll see posted on the screen. Their generous support allows us to put on valuable programs like this. To see past webinars and other valuable resources for our growers, go to coloradoproduce.org. Today's event is being recorded. If for any reason the events get hijacked by a Zoom bomber, we will stop the event and try to reschedule for a later date. All attendees are muted. As part of the registration process, some people submitted questions, which we will try to ask at sometime during the session. But please, if you think of a question, type them in using the Q&A feature on Zoom. If you scroll your mouse along the bottom, you'll see a little icon that says Q&A. Click on that and a question and answer box will pop up. Type your question in there and either one of Senator Gardner's staff or we'll try to ask the question live during the event. Helping me today are Harrison Top of Top Fruits in Delta County, who is a fellow CFVJ board member, and Marilyn Bay Drake, the CFVJ executive director. They will be presenting the questions that are submitted. Our goal today is twofold. One, to better understand Cory's view on Colorado agriculture, and the second is to help him understand some of the challenges we are facing. So, Cory, Senator Gardner, welcome. I would like this to be as informal as we can, of course, using Zoom. So why don't we just start off with you telling us a little bit about, why this job is important to you.
Well, thank you, Robert. Appreciate the chance to be with all of you today. And the last time I was with you, of course, was in your onion field, and I think you handed me a hoe to get to work.
Yeah. So and I was going to actually Zoom this live from my onion field. I was working in the onion field this morning and had it all set up. Had me baling wire and duct tape, holding my phone to one of the monitors so you could see me working. And what happened? The rod weeder broke, so I had to come back to the office. Yeah.
Well, look, I am one of the few members of Congress who knows what a rod weeder is. In fact, I think I can still show you where the rod weeder parts are at the dealership. So for those of you who don't know, I'm in addition to being a senator, I'm also a fifth generation Coloradan from the little town of Yuma, where our family sells farm equipment still today. It's been 105 years now. The implement dealership has been in the family, and everything from weeders, rod weeders to you name it. The old Calkins parts, you name it. We're still, I can still show you where the Acra tillage points are and some of the other stuff that we had. In fact, I remember, Robert, when I was going around running for Congress the first time, I may have told you the story before. I would go around, I would introduce myself to somebody, say, hi, I'm Cory Gardner. I'm from Yuma. I've met most of you at the implement dealership. I've sold half of you the wrong parts. Everybody, when I'd say that we're selling the wrong parts part, everybody would shake their head. Yes, you have. So I think that's why they may have voted for me, is get me off the parts counter. But thank you very much for the chance to be with all of you today. And I think it's important. Look, I'm the only, believe it or not, in a state like Colorado, where agriculture represents a $41 billion part of our economy. It's still the pillar of our state, with vast expanses of rural areas in the Eastern Plains and the Western Slope, and the amount of jobs that our farmers are responsible for. I am the only statewide elected official in Colorado who lives more than 30 miles away from Denver and Boulder. I'm the only rural Coloradan who's elected statewide. Still live in Yuma, and it's one of those things. I think for that agricultural experience, it's important that we have people who understand that when you live in an ag town, and there's a low commodity prices, or there's a hailstorm that comes through, it doesn't affect that town next week or next month or later in the year. It's that very same day. It's that very same day that economic impact is felt. And so, that's why I've fought hard for agricultural opportunities. And, I talk about how we can find ways to keep existing generations of farmers, ranchers on the farm and ranch, and how we bring new generations of farmers and ranchers to the farm and ranch. Because, we see the numbers get smaller and smaller, and the ages of farmers get older and older. And what we need to be doing. In fact, I was alarmed to see some numbers in lending numbers, where some of our chief lenders across the country who have been in charge of loans to young farmers declining dramatically the number of loans to young farmers. And so, we have to make sure that that is able to continue. I want our kids to be able to make a choice of whether they want to stay in Yuma and still be a part of our agricultural heritage or not. Because if things continue, they're not going to have that choice. Because that opportunity won't be there for them. So we need to make sure that we open up those new expanded opportunities to do that. We have to make sure that we're expanding trade opportunities. We have to make sure that we're expanding value-added opportunities. We have to make sure that we are keeping ideas and some of the worst tendencies of Congress to try to control and manipulate our economy from taking place. You look at some of the ideas on the Green New Deal, where they started out with the Green New Deal, where they were talking about how the impact on cows and cattle operations and what it would mean. We need to make sure that we are able to feed and clothe the world with the production here in the United States. I can't remember how many times throughout the entire COVID-19 pandemic that I would look at China and the United States, recognizing that we get 80-90% of our pharmaceuticals from China and our personal protective equipment from China. What if we were as reliant on our food supplies? If we were as reliant on China for our food as we were for our medications and our personal protective equipment, the horrible position that we would be in, even worse than we found ourselves in. So, that's something that we have to make sure that we're always a nation that cannot feed itself, cannot survive. And we have to make sure that we have those in place. I've enjoyed working with the Colorado Fruit and Vegetable Growers Association from the time that I was, growing up. I worked for the National Corn Growers Association after I graduated from law school. Obviously worked in Senator Allard's office with a number of you, but remember when it really came into being was the Energy and Commerce Committee hearings when I served in the House of Representatives, and the Colorado Fruit and Vegetable Growers was formed out of a response and need for food safety issues. And I can remember fighting tooth and nail against those on that committee who wanted to basically drag Colorado producers through the mud and really do damage to our producers. And I fought against that because knowing what it could mean to our state, knowing what it could mean to our farmers and their ability to stay in operation, and the reputational damage that could occur if they made that a sort of a political punching bag that they were trying to. And so we made some good changes, and you all have taken the responsibility to respond accordingly and done a great job in making those changes. I'm somebody who understands the Farm Bill because I helped write the Farm Bill both as a staffer in early 2000s with Senator Allard's office. Of course, my time in the United States Senate and the House of Representatives as we've gone through farm bills and legislation to try to expand opportunities. So really, I think, I ran for office for the state legislature years ago because I felt that Denver and the cities had plenty of voices that were fighting for them. But what we didn't have was somebody who was a loud voice for everywhere else in Colorado, including Denver, but the rural parts of the state that didn't have that same strong champion. And that's why I ran then. It's why I continue to run today, is to be that strong voice, that champion for rural Colorado. Because again, it's who I am, it's where I live, and it's what we need in this country to succeed. Not everybody wants to live in the big city. And there's just there's got to be a room for all of us who want to be a part of something else, and that's a good thing. So I'll stop there, and just happy to answer any questions you might have a conversation about policies and what I can learn from you too. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I remember, what was it, 20 years ago? I remember seeing pictures from Cuba where they didn't have enough food, and there were people actually rioting. They had to have armed guards with fruit and vegetable trucks because people, were so desperate for food. So I would totally agree with you. But I did some back of the napkin calculations, I think, using the 2012 ag census one time, and actually, we always hear the number that less than 2% of the population are farmers. But when you start to narrow it down to fruit and vegetable farmers, oh my gosh, I think at that time I calculated we're less than 0.03%
Yeah, that's right.
And so, we're such a small but a hugely important part of the U.S. population. It's hard to get our message across sometimes.
Yeah. It is, and you think about the work that you're doing each and every day. That field of onions that is providing produce for the entire country. It's remarkable what we can do, and we're not talking millions of acres. We're talking hundreds and thousands, and 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 acres, not hundreds of thousands of acres.
Yeah. Exactly. And then, you know, me and my soapbox too, the diversity of ag is so important. I mean, that's where when people talk about agriculture, they tend to put us all in one lump, but agriculture is so diverse, but that's also what's our strength is our diversity. And I think we need to really promote and keep that as well. But we're only going to have enough time for questions till about 2:35. So if you don't mind, we're going to jump into
Yep.
questions right
Yep.
now. So I'm going to call on Harrison Top. Harrison, what's our first question from our attendees today?
Great, thank you very much. This first question is coming from Palisade. And the question is, what level of commitment can we expect towards ag labor reform in another term?
Yeah, thanks, Harrison, very much for that. And by the way, we had some peaches from Palisade that I believe Clark's helped provide at a luncheon with U.S. senators just a couple of Thursdays ago. So every single U.S. senator was able to enjoy Palisade peaches. And even the senator from Georgia had to admit that they were really, really good. And he took 2 peaches. Senator David Perdue did. And so I think even you got the believers in Georgia Georgia senators about Colorado peaches. So thank you for that. Look, we rely on immigration to do so much of the work in fruit and vegetable production. If you look at Cicada Farms, I mean, my gosh, you guys, when did you have to quit growing corn? Just a few years ago, right? Because you couldn't find get the job done. And so we have to have a meaningful labor force if we are going to feed this country. So just a couple of years ago, I voted for every single immigration reform that Republicans and Democrats alike brought to the floor because we needed it. And we need an immigration system, a guest worker program that works for agriculture, recognizing that there are different parts and elements of agriculture, that not everybody is an onion operation, not everybody is a dairy operation. And you have different seasonal needs that have to be recognized in a guest worker program, because you can't expect your labor to show up in August because it's too late by then. So we need to have a system that is reliable, that is certain, that is ample in terms of the numbers, and that is consistent. You know, we've done that in this country. Decades ago, we had programs that actually worked. And yes, we needed more oversight. And yes, there were some abuses that took place, but we can make those reforms. We can implement those changes, those oversight changes, and make it work again. So that's what we have to do long term. I have a working group with Senator Tillis, Senator Feinstein, and a number of others that are working with the Secretary of Agriculture and the administration to put forward a meaningful farm labor program that will provide that certainty and the numbers that we need. I think it was Congressman Panetta that passed out of the House of Representatives a bill. We're working on that in the Senate. Feinstein, Tillis, and I and others that can get a Senate version out and get that into law as soon as possible.
Senator, you did mention food safety in your opening remarks and your work on that. We have a specific question about that, and it is, do you have plans or approaches as to how you would incorporate into farmers' insurance coverage for food safety outbreaks, such as we had a couple on onions and peaches just this fall and summer?
Yeah, I think that's something I want to work with you on. I think we can absolutely get that done. It would take some of the support from the government to make sure that happens. I look forward to working with you and experts across the country who know this, the need in a way that actually can get it done in a way that is supported properly through our insurance program, the commodity insurance programs that we have. So to expand that usefulness of insurance programs. Look, more and more demands are being put on growers and producers. The American expectation for food safety continues to increase, and you all have done a marvelous job of that. But we need to make sure that the U.S. government is an active and equal partner in helping achieve the goals that the government sets as requirements. I think it was FDA Administrator Taylor that we worked with so much on several years back on the water rules, and I think it was particularly as it related to onions, and if water touched the onions or touched any of the what you were growing, then it had to go through a treated system, and how that just simply in those early versions wasn't going to work in Colorado. So we need to have those insurance programs in place so that it helps deal with the requirements of the government, but also the demands of the American consumer. So I look forward to working with you to provide such a product and getting it structured so that it will actually meet your needs.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea because they've, tossed around the idea that if we have a field all of a sudden that becomes contaminated with something, we've totally lost income. So
Yep.
it'd be nice to have some kind of coverage for that so that,
Yeah.
we wouldn't be afraid to find a problem that way. So it's an interesting concept that we'll have to work on together with.
Yeah.
So, Harrison, do you have another question from the audience?
Sure. This question comes from the San Luis Valley, and it is, how will the senator work to increase trade agreements for agriculture?
Yeah, look, I'm a strong believer in trade. I'm a strong proponent of free trade. And obviously, we have to make sure that other countries are living up to their end of the bargain, and we have to make sure that they're not able to have a better deal than we are. So let's enforce our trade agreements. Let's enforce the letter of the law. Make sure that they are fairly and equally enforced. I'll give an example of Vietnam. Right now, Vietnam, in certain products in agriculture, basically can come into the U.S. with 0 tariffs on any of their products. But for U.S. certain products to go into Vietnam, it's about an 18% tariff that we would face on them. Well, that's the status quo as it is today. So why wouldn't we want to enter into a free trade agreement with Vietnam through the Trans-Pacific Partnership if it means that we're going to drop those tariffs and have more access to their markets, because they've already got plenty of access to our markets. So I'm a strong proponent of trade and trade agreements. How would I promote them? Number one, I continue to address the need for trade agreements with our trade representative and our Secretary of Commerce, Wilbur Ross, and the need to pursue them. Right now, I'm working on a bilateral trade agreement with Taiwan, particularly as it relates to some of our beef and pork opportunities with them and the barriers that they put in place to reduce them. But it would certainly have some opportunities in fruit and vegetable growers as well. Perhaps not as great as the beef side of things, but still some opportunities. And, working on that right now, actively negotiating with Taiwan and the U.S. government. I passed a bill called the Asia Reassurance Initiative Act in 2018. This bill was signed into law, and it requires the U.S. to explore the Trans-Pacific Partnership, a Southeast Asia trade agreement with the ASEAN nations who aren't otherwise included in the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And it also puts a significant amount of money into opening up new markets for U.S. Products, including agricultural products. That's just a few of the ways we do it. I don't like tariffs. I think tariffs are a tax on the American consumer. And look, we absolutely need to enforce our trade agreements, and we need fair trade. If somebody like China is denying access to a U.S. product, then we should deny access to that same product if they try to get into the United States. But we need trade agreements that open up new markets, and that's why I continue to fight for them. Those are just a few of the examples in ways that I'm doing it.
I know also, the sanitary, phytosanitary standards are so important because so many times those are used as a kind of a trade barrier when really there's nothing wrong with the product.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you see that in everything from, a number of crops. I mean, potatoes, you name it. I mean, they're always trying to do something on a food safety issue to hide a protectionist intent. And that's where we have to enforce those agreements and not let people get away with it. And I think because we've let people get away with things, it's given trade agreements a bad name because in some circles, not all circles, but because they got away with it. But if you enforce them, if you make people stand to the benefit of the bargain, it's a great thing, and that's what we need to do. Yeah,
I know. I think I know I was in favor of TPP when it was first set up, and sometimes I think just knowing what to expect is important too. So that when you're making a business plan, you have to know what's going to happen. And I know too. I appreciate that because you actually have a lot of experience. Isn't one of the committees you're involved with actually you deal with a lot with foreign relations? So you come with a lot of experience in that area.
Yeah, I serve as the chairman of the East Asia Subcommittee on Foreign Relations Committee. And so I've built great relationships across Asia. That legislation that I mentioned, ARIA, is the sort of first ever generational approach to U.S. Asia policy. And, if we want to counter China, what better way than to enter into trade agreements where you take a significant portion of the global economy that has high standards, rules that you can enforce, and we're the ones putting Western trade values in place instead of letting China dictate the terms of trade. So if we're not doing it, they are. So why don't we do it? I think that's what's important.
Yeah, that's so critical. And even though we don't directly export, it helps us somewhat, just like we've talked about in an onion market. If the Pacific Northwest can't export onions, it sickens the whole entire US
Yeah.
market. So
It
it's
pushes
critical
the whole
for us
thing,
to
yeah,
fight for that. Yeah, exactly. Marilyn, was there another audience question?
Yeah, we sure do. This one comes from the Arkansas Valley, so that'll help understand a little bit. A comment says every politician brags about job growth. How are you going to protect rural Colorado from the resulting water transfers?
Yeah, boy, look, I grew up in Yuma. Our water is a couple 100 feet down in the ground. And obviously you've got a huge portion of northeastern Colorado that's reliant on the South Platte. And of course, the Arkansas Valley reliant on the Arkansas and what it means. A couple things that we need to be doing. Number one, we need to keep the federal government hands off of Colorado water law. So we need to protect Colorado's water law by getting the federal government out. That's why Waters of the United States needs to be going away. The rule that we stopped, that needs to stay out and not come back. Secondly, we need more water storage. We have to have more water storage. Because, the growing needs of the cities, they're going to find a way to get water. And with low commodity prices, it's going to be too tempting for people to decide that they can lease or maybe sell the one commodity that has a high price, and that's water. Well, you've seen the counties in southeastern Colorado where they've taken that water off, and it's now in the hands of Aurora, and what that means for those farms, what that means for economic development, economic opportunity, it's incredibly challenging. So we need more water storage. We need more ability for farmers to use their water the ways that they need to in order to make their operation work. Couple things we need to do on water storage. Number one, we need to streamline the system of getting permits. It shouldn't take 10, 15, 20 years to get past the first litigative hurdle in building water storage. Number two, the federal government needs to be an active partner with the state and local municipalities on that water storage. Three, we ought to be developing new conservation techniques. I mean, look at the work that you have done in water conservation, the tape irrigation, the new kinds of practices, tillage management, those kind of things that have really reduced water consumption. That's going to be a huge part of it too. But conservation is not, we cannot conserve our way out of our water needs when you have a state that is growing like we are. You could build every single water project that is either under consideration or on the books today, and we still wouldn't have enough water to meet the needs, the projected needs of industry and our state population in the future. So we have to focus on it. So I've introduced legislation to help put bookends on the permits to make the project go faster once it's approved. I've introduced a bill to promote new water storage at the Bureau of Reclamation, to provide dollars for water storage and development for agricultural purposes. It was my legislation and Martha McSally that passed the Colorado River Drought Contingency Program to protect Colorado from lower basin demands on that side of the state. Just the conservation programs that we need to protect. We continue to work with them at USDA to try to provide new conservation opportunities to save water and to put it toward that beneficial use in Colorado. But first and foremost, too, though, got to keep the federal government's hands off of Colorado water.
I see a comment that just popped up in the question and answer, says, thank you for securing funding for the Arkansas conduit as well.
Yeah. And so, this is something I'm super excited about. The Arkansas Valley Conduit, 1963, President Kennedy went to Pueblo, Colorado, 1962, Pueblo, Colorado, announces the Arkansas Valley Conduit, and we finally broke ground on the Arkansas Valley Conduit on Saturday. 2020. And so this is going to be about, you think about this, a possibly $610 million project, 50,000 people with clean drinking water throughout the region. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce estimates that that every $1 million spent on infrastructure results in about 6 to 7 people being hired. That project over its 15 years estimated could hire 4,000 people in southeastern Colorado. So that's a great economic development front as well, in addition to providing clean water.
And I think hats off to you and your bipartisan efforts too, because I think we'd have to learn to work with our Western states. So many times we hear concerns, we don't want to have California take any more water, but I think we can get a lot more done if we work with them. And, as you were talking about on projects, are there joint projects that we can do that will benefit all of us?
Yeah. Well, look, that whole system is built to help the whole system. And we got to make sure that we're partnering together to do that. And I think I've worked hard to become the third most bipartisan member of the United States Senate because it matters. If you start with something that's bipartisan, you end with something that's bipartisan.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like that. I have to remember that comment. Harrison, is there another question?
Yes, this question comes from Fort Collins. And could you elaborate a little bit how you would like to build a roadmap for rural economies?
Yeah, look, so I'm the Beth Ford. Beth Ford is the CEO of Land O'Lakes Cooperative. And we have been working together on an idea for rural economic development that's a sort of a national blueprint for what rural economic development would mean. And our idea and our hope is to take this national blueprint and get people to buy into it across the country. So it's our cooperatives, it's our fruit and vegetable growers associations, it's the wheat growers and the corn growers and the small town chamber of commerce organizations, so that everybody can see what it is that we need to do. And so what does it look like? Well, we think we need an infrastructure component. Infrastructure, yes, roads and bridges and locks and dams and those kinds of things to get commodities to and from the market, and trucks to and from the markets. But it's also it's internet, broadband, so that our communities can be competitive. We've learned during COVID that you don't need to be at the downtown Denver office building. Well, not only does that mean that you don't have to be in the downtown Denver office building, well, maybe it means you don't have to be in the suburbs. Maybe it means you can be in the Lamars and the Craigs to do your work. But we need to make sure that they have broadband to get the job done at that point. So we've introduced legislation to advance fund billions of dollars worth of work for that infrastructure. The second thing, of course, is healthcare. We got to make sure that these places have healthcare. Telehealth is a part of it, but that's a huge part of it. Education opportunities, that's a huge part of it. And then that ranch and farm component of it is based on financing and funding for new farmers and young farmers. It's value-added opportunities for our commodities and our products. I met with I don't know if anybody knew this or not, but the CEO of 505 Chilies, the green chilies. It's headquartered here in Denver, Colorado. And we were talking about Pueblo chilies. And they said, well, maybe we could start a Pueblo chili line through 505. And I said, that's awesome. So, we're going to be connecting them with the 505 chili people to try to start that conversation about it. And then, the other part of our rural economies. So in the middle of COVID, my wife decides we need a new light in the house, a new light. And she finds this light online. I don't know what website it was, but the light consisted of a railroad tie and 6 light bulbs, and it was $600. And I thought, that is absurd. And so I said, I can make that. It may take me a while, but I can make that. And it's not going to cost $600. And so, but it made me think, farmers and ranchers, they are creative. They are very, very talented people who make things and invent things. And so can we create sort of a manufacturing incubator in some of our rural communities where you take an old implement dealership shop and you put in community tools? Maybe it's welding equipment, maybe it's milling equipment, maybe it's some other kind of product, and you basically create these little incubators where people can go start manufacturing something that we could sell in a rural community to urban community kind of work marketplace, where all of a sudden we're making that railroad tie with 6 light bulbs on it for $300 and selling it to some places at $600. And we're still making good money on it. So those all go into opportunity zones, or part of that rural economic development. 60% of the opportunity zones in Colorado are in rural areas. We created those opportunity zones in the 2017 tax cuts. If you're working in an opportunity zone, your wage growth is about 8% higher than a non-opportunity zone worker. And so that's starting to have the effect. Now, the real estate side of opportunity zones has really taken off. Affordable housing, those kind of investments. Where we haven't seen it is in the job creation, and that's what rural Colorado opportunity zones really need. So we're waiting for Treasury to put out some more opportunities and guidances for us to get those jobs there and those investments. And then, of course, that we have to get that sort of national framework so that everybody can start targeting on rural development, so that we're all rowing in the same direction, as they say, for rural needs. And I think if we do that, and we have some of the biggest big companies focused on it, we'll have a lot more success in our rural development efforts.
Yeah, that's some interesting concepts. I know I've gone to Santa Fe and I've seen some of these art displays, and it's like, oh, that looks like my old D9 track, that's
Right.
falling apart in the junkyard. They've made it into this nice chair display. It's like, wow.
Yeah, we have this incredible, talented person that works for us at the dealership, where she can take the old spindle off of a table or a finial off of a rail, and she'll paint she'll make this Santa Claus out of it, a figurine, and it's awesome. And you know what? We could be selling that. People be paying $50 for that in LA.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? Well, you better not tell your neighbor, Commissioner Don Brown. He might be turning those center pivot sprinkler systems into some fancy art object. You never
That's
know.
right.
Now, I have totally forgot who I've left off. Who's next for asking a question?
It's me. We have a question here about your plan to on COVID.
Yeah, so there's a couple plans on COVID that we need to implement immediately, and that's. Oh, and by the way, my last question too. Before I answer the COVID question, going back to the last rural development, we need to make sure that energy remains a viable opportunity in this country. Because if we lose our energy development, farmers and ranchers are going to lose a valuable income opportunity in our communities and the tax base too. So we can't let that go. On COVID, a couple things. Number one, I do believe we need additional relief for individuals, for help, for our education systems, for our vaccine and our personal protective equipment efforts. So I continue to support that need for an additional package. We fell 8 votes shy a couple weeks ago on a bill in the United States Senate that would have provided that funding. We had more than a majority. We had 52 people, but we couldn't get over the 60 vote threshold. But it would have extended a lot of the help that we need now, including the Paycheck Protection Program that we finally got opened up to ag a second draw on that loan to allow people to go back into it. I also have introduced a bill called the Test Act with Senator Bennett. Senator Bennett and I have worked on this. It would create a national testing and diagnostics plan for the country that would coordinate local public health departments with the federal government, so that we can identify hotspots before they become outbreaks. We can that way you're avoiding shutdowns and you're avoiding the economic challenges that creates. On the testing front, I continue to support efforts to get more and more tests out into the country. We have this lateral flow test, I believe it is, that's going to be pretty rapid, pretty cheap, and they'll be able to manufacture like 100 million of these tests very, very soon. And so the more testing we have, the more data we have, the more information and tools we have to stop and isolate an incident. Got to continue the funding of vaccines so that we can prevent this thing and stop it in its tracks. So those are all just some of the ideas on the COVID relief. On the farm side of things, agriculture side of things, I have continued to support agricultural relief as a result of the pandemic. I think that bill also contained another $20 billion in ag relief for producers because of the variety of disruptions and commodity challenges that we've had. And we need to continue that help as well.
Yeah, COVID has really thrown a lot of monkey wrenches in everybody's lives. And I feel for those families where, they've gotten sick and lost their loved ones. And it's created quite a turmoil out there. But I know in one sense, it's really interesting. I think I've seen an interest more in Colorado product because of that.
Oh, interesting.
Wanted to know where their food was coming from, and wanted to support local. And people are staying at home and eating more, where they used to be eating out, and they weren't as curious about where their food was coming from. So I hope we can continue to promote Colorado product to the consumer and educate them about where their food is coming from.
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. And I think and that's something that we can do too on the rural economic development side. Is the rural development side is I do think we need to take advantage of that farm to table and that local grower, because people want more of that, and we got to figure out how to facilitate more of that.
Yeah, and I think a good way is really controlling regulations too. I mean, because as a seasonal operation, I can't afford to hire a full-time person that's just dealing with regulations. When we're only harvesting onions for 2 weeks. And so keeping those unnecessary regulations out of our way is the biggest thing I think that you can do to help us.
Well, thanks to you. Every time I go to the grocery store and I see a white onion versus a yellow onion, I know how temperamental and challenging those white onions are compared to the yellows.
Good. And onions are good for you.
I agree.
I see a question here. I'm going to ask you that somebody posted online. And and it kind of, reason I want to ask, it kind of reminds me when you first entered the Senate and I was able to come to Washington, D.C. to visit you. I actually couldn't find your office because you were like down in the basement next to behind the copiers or something. It was like, holy mackerel, as a freshman senator. So I want to ask this question to you that somebody asked is, with your experience, what are a few of the most important qualifications that you feel it is to be a successful U.S. Senator?
Well, thanks. That's a great question. And that office, by the way, we discovered one 3-day weekend that it was also next to the Senate restaurant's trash compactor, and that they did not dump the trash Saturday, Sunday, or Monday. And when you came into the office on Tuesday after, say, Martin Luther King Day holiday, that trash stunk to high heaven. So anyway, look, I think the tools for a successful member of Congress is a willingness to get the job done, to be a workhorse. There are people in Congress. I think there's 3 types of members of Congress. You got the people who just want to be on TV all the time, and you can probably name 5 of them right now, whether it's MSNBC or Fox News. There's the people who just want to be in Congress, so somebody will, when they go home to the county fair, they'll call them, "Hey, Congressman, how are you?" And then the third type are the people who actually want to get stuff done. They're there for the right reasons. Now, you may disagree with them. You may not think that their ideas are very good, but they're there because they believe they're the right thing to do. And they're there for, they want to help and they want to fix the country and make it better. The good news is that's the largest group of people. So, and what makes them good? They're dedicated to get things done. They have ideas. They're willing to put in the work. They're open to listening to people. They work in a bipartisan fashion. They hear the voices of their constituents and recognize the work that they do. That's the largest group. Now, again, they may not always agree with each other, and you may not agree with them, but that's the largest group. The problem is the first and the second group have to team up with each other, because the second group, since they don't do anything, they need to know somebody who does get on TV, so that when they go home and run for re-election, oh yeah, I know so-and-so who's on TV all the time. We're best friends. And they bring them out to the state and show them around a little bit, and they help each other out. And then the entire discourse in the public is defined by the people that you only see on TV all of the time. Well, their goal is to be on TV. Their goal is to be political entrepreneurs, not to get things done. And so what we need to do as an American public, I think, is to actually promote that third group of people into that first group of people, where that third group is the group of people that we hear from, that we hear their ideas, that we hear their work that they're doing. Because I think when the American people hear that and see what makes them that way, I think they'd start voting out that first and second group and start putting more of them in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can't imagine what it's like to work in Washington, D.C. I mean, on one side, it's got to be really exciting to, like you said, to have that goal of wanting to help, and yet facing some of the obstacles that you do. So.
Well, and Bob, Robert, I think if you look at the work that we've done, I have passed more legislation into law than the entire Colorado congressional delegation combined. And that's everything from the most recent Great American Outdoors Act, which is the biggest conservation victory in our country in over 50 years, to the Asia bill that I've talked to you about at length on this call, to a bill that the president's going to sign into law any hour now to create a 3-digit 988 national suicide prevention hotline. And those were all bipartisan. They're all going to provide great benefit to Colorado and the country. And so there's a lot of that going on. We just need more of it.
Yeah, and it's interesting why we don't hear about the bipartisan efforts. It's especially during the election year. It's unfortunate.
Doesn't sell news. Yeah, doesn't sell.
Yeah, I know it doesn't sell. I don't know. So, is there a way that we could reform? I know I'm not alone in getting really tired of all the political ads that we hear and see on TV.
Well, I don't
Do
know
you have any ideas how to reform some of that activity?
Yeah, look, I mean, I apologize. Number one, just hit the mute button, change the channel. I'm much taller on TV than I am in person. Look, it is tough, and you have 30 seconds to do it, and they're probably 15 seconds too long at that. And so, I hope that people realize that the message behind them is just trying to figure out how do we best serve the people of Colorado.
Yeah, and we, as a side note too, we still hope you're working on our nonprofit status for mutual ditch companies effort. I know you've worked with us in the past on that.
I'm going to continue that. Yep, we just need a parliamentarian rule who. I think I told you what happened during the tax debates when we tried to add it. They actually said it wasn't expensive enough to be included. A crazy rule.
Yeah, that is crazy. That is crazy. I'm sorry. So Harrison, was it you next? Do we have any more questions?
Sure. Actually, this is a question that I have, and it's for the senator, both as a senator and as a implement dealer, and it's about farmers' data propriety. Do you have an opinion about farmers and their data and how to protect that data, if it's necessary to?
So this is a big, big challenge. I've asked everybody from the seed companies to the banks to the insurance companies about this, and of course the dealerships about this, and the equipment manufacturers. I sold our first, I want to say it was 1997, when we sold the first GPS system in a combine to a farmer out in Yuma County. And I can remember we set up a duplicate sort of monitor at the dealership. So in case the monitor and the combine failed, and back then it was the old PCM CIA pin cards that you were feeding into the monitor, just in case something failed, they could bring it in and we could download the data. And, sure enough, 4th of July comes around, wheat harvest, middle of wheat harvest, and sure enough, that failed. And so they had to download the data. But I was thinking about all of that information back in 1997, yield information, what it meant on the field, moisture, protein, all of the stuff that it was measuring at that point, what that data could be used for. And if you've got a hybrid seed technology out there, and you've got somebody doing it, and you're in the field, you've planted it, you're harvesting it, your monitor is reading that data. Is that data going to the farmer? Is that data going to Pioneer Seed or whoever it's going to? Is that data going to Case Corporation? Is it going to Farmers State Bank or First Farm Bank? Is it going to, maybe it's going to all of the above. So Harrison, I will tell you this, we need a policy that protects farmers' information data, and that information that is gleaned through the process of the work that you do. The yield information, that kind of proprietary information. Because what if a bank starts making loans based on that information? What if the insurance company starts making premiums based on that kind of information? The data issue is a real challenge that we need to get our hands around. And I think groups like an organization like the fruit and vegetable growers need to be a part of that. Corn growers, wheat growers, farm bureaus, getting our hands around that data and understanding that privacy issue is really important. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it too, because I don't know that we have all the right answers yet.
Yeah, Harrison, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yes and no. We don't have quite the same issue, at least in stone fruits, because we're not using as much precision technology as I think a lot of the commodity growers are. But we have had the opportunity to work with a couple of tech startups. It feels like every other day you get a call from a startup that says they've got the solution for you. And that was a big question when we began working with some of these startups, is who's going to own this data in the end? What are you going to use that data for? What are the implications going to be for the farmer? I think we're all very in tune with the conversations around data usage in Facebook and Instagram and social media, and Amazon and Google.
And on that side of things, the Twitters, the Facebook, I mean, that's a whole new ball of wax that we have to have privacy protections for, because they know so much about us that I think people would be shocked to know what they know about us.
Sure. It's the really difficult question where a lot of this technology is very expensive, and if they can sell the data and make it cheaper, maybe there's a real benefit to that. But at the same time, we don't want to get ourselves into the situation we are in with so many of the other internet tools that we get for free, but we're really not.
Well, that's exactly right, Harrison. I mean, there's a reason Facebook is free, right? That you can set up your own page on it. It's because they're selling your information.
Yeah. So it's something that does worry me, though, and I'm glad to hear that you think it's a concern. It's something that we need to address.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Harrison. Well, we're almost out of time. So, Senator, I appreciate you taking the time with us, and kind of in your concluding remarks here, the last couple of minutes we have, help us. Let us know what you think we could be doing, Colorado Fruit and Vegetable Growers Association could be doing to really help educating those that 98% of the population that don't understand farming, and all the important people that are working on the farms, how important everybody is, from whether they're pulling a weed to working at a desk. I appreciate your role in that, and just open it up for your closing remarks.
Well, thank you. Look, I think that having relationships with policymakers at every level matters, and helping them to understand what it is that you do, how your markets work, what your labor needs are. And I mean that at every level. I mean your county commissioners and your state legislators and your member of Congress, because eventually that county commissioner becomes that state legislator. That state legislator becomes that member of Congress or governor. And we need to make sure that they understand your needs and the challenges that you face. And it used to be that, our rural counties, they were pretty informed, but we've seen a lot of change, and we need to make sure that they understand that. So that's one thing. Working with our schools, and I know it's tough, but every chance we get to work with kids and bring them out to the operations, they can see how an onion is raised. They can see how a melon works and what it is, and the irrigation systems and the water systems that go into it. Because every time you have that exposure, they're taking a little bit with them. Maybe it'll encourage them to get involved, and maybe they'll be a part of it at some point, or maybe they'll understand it when they get into a decision-making capacity themselves, that they need to ask a question about what it could do to impact you and your operation. I think that helps. And then making sure that we have people who are going to stand up and fight for you. That's why I'd be honored to earn your support and your votes over the next several weeks. Is we make sure that we have somebody who's going to be a loud voice, a strong voice, somebody who's committed to the success of all parts of our state. That I-70 doesn't end at Vail. I-70 doesn't end at Strasburg. It goes all the way out to Utah. It goes all the way out to Kansas. And we need to make sure that everywhere in our state, all four corners are represented. And that's what I committed 6 years ago to you. And that's what I continue to commit today. So thanks for letting me join you. And we'll get through these challenging times together. I was in church the last week before it went, online, virtual. We were reviewing a passage of the Bible that talked about how our struggles and tribulations build perseverance. And out of that perseverance comes character. And out of that character comes hope. And that is the definition of agriculture.
Yeah, it really is. Well, thank you very much for all your hard work, Senator, and thank you for joining us today with our CFEJ conversation with you. And our door is always open to you as well. So if there's any way that you want more information about what we're doing, please feel free to contact us anytime. Well, thanks everybody for joining us today. This recording, thank you, Senator. Again, we recorded it and we'll be posting it to our website, and go to coloradoproduce.org to see many of the resources that we have. Thank you very much, everybody, and take care. Bye-bye.